this debate round, we're having a real-world policy debate round. And you as the judges are acting as congressmen. And in this debate, before we pass a policy, we must actually see if we have the right information to pass that policy. And that's critical. As you as the judges are acting like Congress, would you pass a policy if you did not have the right information to pass that policy? If you didn't have the evidence or the statistics to make an educated decision? And unfortunately, we see with the affirmative team's case, that they actually don't have the information necessary to make an accurate decision on whether or not we should end military commissions. And in this speech, that's what we're going to be seeing. Not only that the affirmative team's plan is insignificant, but that it would undermine our U.S. national security. In this speech, first I'm going to be going through the goal or the counter standard of the negative team. Then I'm going to be looking at significance points and lastly disadvantages, showing you why the current system is the better alternative to the affirmative team's plan. So first, let's look at the goal of the negative team, or counter standard. We believe the goal should be U.S. national security. U.S. national security. Now, the affirmative team's goal is justice. However, in their 1AC, they even stated that the entire reason why the United States government should have justice is for the sake of the American people. So as we can see, national security actually achieves justice because it's for the sake of the American people. Not only this, when we look at the issue of terrorists, the entire reason why the United States has terrorists in military commissions or federal courts is for the sake of national security. So as we see, we should prefer the goal of national security. And that leads me to significance. I have a couple main significance points. My first significance point is that of not harming American citizens. Not harming American citizens. Now I'd like to explain something. There's a stock issue or burden of proof called significance. What this means is that the affirmative team must present you a significant harm and a significant advantage over the current system. And if they fail to fulfill this standard, we should not pass their plan. We have to ask the question, what problem is the affirmative team actually trying to fix? In military commissions, these terrorists are held indefinitely. What's the problem with them being held indefinitely? Now, the affirmative team has really claimed only one very, very minor harm, and that is that we're not providing closure for victims, and that somehow this undermines justice. What's important is that when we provide closure for victims, that's only one component of what justice is. Justice is simply not just providing closure for victims. So the affirmative team must actually present a tangible, real-world harm to this debate round. American citizens are not being harmed because terrorists are just being held in military commissions. There's simply nothing wrong with them being held in military commissions. And that's critical because if the affirmative team cannot prove to you that, they cannot prove that somehow military commissions are undermining our national security, they can't prove to you that they're counterproductive. You see, it's not like military commissions, the terrorists are running around free. And in Guantanamo Bay, they're actually being held there indefinitely. And that leads me to my second significance point, that of not a substantial reform. This is a critical point. In fact, this came out in cross-examination. My partner asked of how many terrorists are held in Guantanamo Bay, and they had no information. Not only this, the terrorists that we have in Guantanamo Bay were way back in the past, at the time of 9/11. This is not a significant issue, and the affirmative team's plan will not have a significant reform, because A, they cannot even give you the number of terrorists held in Guantanamo Bay, and second, this was all the way in the past. The affirmative team's plan is not only an insignificant harm, there will not be a significant reform under their plan. Now, I'd quickly like to respond to a point. In their speech, they said that federal courts have convicted 600 terrorists, and military commissions have convicted only 8 terrorists. However, this number is very misleading. Here's the reason why. In military commissions, we try higher international terrorists. We try some of the most highest international terrorists in the world. And in military commissions, we do not try, in federal courts, we do not try the same international terrorists as we do in Guantanamo Bay. So even if we have convicted 600 terrorists, the number is not comparable to those in Guantanamo Bay. This is a critical point. The affirmative team's entire case kind of rests on this point. They're saying that federal courts are more effective, they're efficient, and they try more terrorists. While their numbers aren't comparable to those in Guantanamo Bay. In fact, according to Robert Farley, in February 12, 2010, quote, there are probably less than a dozen cases against people in the Islamic jihadist framework who have been convicted in a federal court of serious terrorism-related crimes comparable to many of the Guantanamo detainees. So there's actually only a dozen, around that number. It's not 600 that are comparable to those terrorists held in Guantanamo Bay. So as we can see, the affirmative team fails the burden of proof of significance. That leads me to my disadvantages. I have one main disadvantage under the affirmative team's plan, and that is national security is undermined. We're undermining national security. I have a couple main points under this. My first point is that of classified information. We're giving up classified information. Now, I think it's important that we take a step back and look at the background of how military commissions and how it works in Guantanamo Bay. Now, in Guantanamo Bay, the United States government can use classified information to try international terrorists. Now, in federal courts, the federal court has the discretion to ask for classified information. Now, why is this a problem? Well, the United States government has classified officials working in the Middle East who can present information about terrorists. And it'd be a national security threat if we had to expose who these people were who were providing the information in federal courts. So this would be a national security threat. I actually have a couple of examples of how this would be a national security threat. This is from Thomas Sowell on September 13, 2018, quote, "But over and above the utter inconsistency of what is being done is the utter recklessness it represents. The first time an attack on the World Trade Center was treated as a matter of domestic criminal justice was after Islamic terrorists exploded a bomb there in 1993. Under the rules of American criminal law, the prosecution had to turn over all sorts of information to the defense. Information that told the Al-Qaeda International Terrorist Network what we knew about them and how we knew it. In a federal court, the federal court required the government to provide information about that terrorist. And that information that we gave them gave an advantage to Al-Qaeda, a terrorist group that the United States opposes, and Al-Qaeda is a threat to U.S. national security. So actually, when we try to hide international terrorists in a federal court, we ended up undermining our national security. And that leads me to my second point under my disadvantage, is that the terrorists can abuse federal courts. And I have a piece of evidence here from Michael McCuskey on October 19, 2009, quote, "Even after conviction, the issue is not whether maximum security prison can hold these defendants. Of course it can, but their presence even inside the walls as proselytizers, if nothing else, is itself a danger. The recent arrest of U.S. citizen Michael Finton, a convert to Islam, proselytized in prison and charged with planning to blow up a building in Springfield, Illinois, is only the latest example of that problem." So even if federal courts can hold terrorists, and even in prisons after they've been convicted under a federal court, the problem is that this actually feeds terrorist propaganda. Terrorists take advantage in prison. So again, this actually makes the problem worse and undermines U.S. national security. Now, in conclusion, as the negative team, we agree that there are some problems with military commissions, but at the same time, they're still a valuable option. So we believe that the United States government should have federal courts and military commissions, because neither are perfect. And that is why we're debating a real-world policy, and that's why we should side with the negative team.